Europe. It's exactly 10:30. Our world is already shaped by artificial intelligence, from smartphones down to the algorithms used by high street retailers and companies like Google and Amazon and Facebook to influence our behaviour on and offline. In the coming decades, AI will change everything, and there's been a lot of recent warnings from people like Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates about this. A man who knows all about artificial intelligence is our next guest. He's written a book about it called Surviving AI. I'm delighted to welcome Calum Chace to the show. Good morning, Calum.
Good morning, Bill. That was a very nice, cheery song.
It was, wasn't it just? It was nice to hear that, wasn't it? Yeah.
A great introduction to a chat about artificial intelligence.
Absolutely, yes. This could be either a very doom-laden conversation or a reasonably positive one, depending on how we go, really, here. Couldn't it, Calum?
Well, it could, but it's sunny over there and it's sunny over here, so let's keep it upbeat.
Fantastic. And we don't have artificial intelligence to thank for that. Not yet. Now, let's first, for people who, it sounds obvious what artificial intelligence is, but how would you define it?
It's actually a good question and a much harder thing to define than you think, because intelligence is so hard to define. In fact, there is no agreed definition, but just to keep it simple, the easiest way to think of it is intelligence is the ability to achieve goals and solve problems in a range of different environments. Oh, right, okay. And then we take that and get machines to do it for us. Exactly. We make our own intelligence. And as you say, it already exists at a low level. We certainly don't have anything approaching human-level artificial intelligence yet. But there's lots and lots of AI. It's all around us. It makes the world go round. When did we first start to use AI? Was it as recently as people like Turing and Babbage? Even more recently than that. 1956 was the birth date of AI. There was a conference in America called the Dartmouth Conference, and that's when artificial intelligence got going. Interesting. Okay, so what if you take a machine that Turing made, for example, to decode the German messages? Wasn't that artificial intelligence? No, that wasn't even actually a computer. It wasn't a general-purpose computer. Turing laid down some of the theoretical foundations for the computing we now have. And the machines, which were called bombs, which he helped create, which cracked the Enigma, were fantastic machines. But no, computing got started shortly after, using some of his theory. The other great contribution that Turing made that people know about is the Turing test, which is the idea that if you have a conversation with a computer and you cannot tell it's a computer, then you probably have to accept that it is a person, that it has achieved human-level intelligence. Right. How interesting. Now, I mentioned in the preamble there that it is all around us. It's not around us in a particular... You said you used the expression low level, didn't you? I did, purely to distinguish it, and there's a really important distinction. Distinguish between what's called artificial narrow intelligence, which is what we have at the moment, where AIs are very good at certain specific things. For instance, no human can beat a chess computer at chess. And for a long time, none of us could do arithmetic, anything like as well as a calculator can do. But there is no computer which can do all of the cognitive tasks that a human can. There is no computer that's aware of itself and that can think and create its own goals. Right, so there are a lot of acronyms in AI, aren't there? And that one you've just given us there has its own acronym, ANI. Correct, Artificial Narrow Intelligence, and that is by distinction with Artificial General Intelligence, AGI, and that is an intelligence, an AI, which does have all the abilities of a human and can do anything as well as we can intellectually. So what kind of AI or ANI is currently existing? I'm guessing we're talking here about things like, for example, if I start typing into my Word document a word, it will suggest a replacement. That's surely artificial intelligence. It is. That's right. That's what used to be known as predictive texting, and for instance, SwiftKey, a good British company, in the forefront of that. In fact, the thing you'll do that into, your smartphone, is a repository of enormous amounts of AI. That's probably the place where all of us see AI in action most of all. And it's an interesting thought that your smartphone has more computing power in it than NASA used, all of NASA's resources, to send Neil Armstrong to the moon. Extraordinary. And other everyday uses of artificial intelligence, every time I guess I type into Google something, that is a serious amount of AI going on there. Google Google's search engine is powered by what's called Google Brain, which is a huge amount of computing power and servers all over the world. And I still find Google search nothing short of miraculous. For instance, I found out that you produced one of my favourite albums.
No!
Julia Fordham.
Julia Fordham, I did indeed. Good Lord, sir.
Now, that was thanks to Google Search. Google Search has almost made us omniscient. It's a quite remarkable transformation in human affairs over the last 15 years.
And is it fair to say that something like Google is continually learning as well?
It is. It's continually learning, continually improving. And the founders and owners of Google, well, the major owners, their goal in life, really, is to create a brain. They've said it a few times. They are out to make a brain because they think it will be a wonderful thing for humanity.
Let's talk about business for a second here. How is artificial intelligence used to influence us?
Well, there's the obvious example of Amazon recommendations, which is a bit basic, but all those ads that pop up that seem surprisingly relevant to us. That's a use of AI. Netflix does the same sort of thing, but we're actually fairly early on in the progress of AI. It's the early days. But we're starting to see some big effects. So one that everybody's come across is Uber, which is a peer-to-peer system, peer-to-peer service, and that relies on AI. That uses a hell of a lot of data and algorithms to work out where the passengers are and where the cars are. And one of the things about these new types of business models is they're very disruptive. So Uber is making taxi drivers all over the world very unhappy. Yeah. Airbnb is a similar business model, peer-to-peer, in the accommodation industry, and that's making hoteliers very nervous all over the world.
Yes, so there is a potential downside in terms of work, and careers could be cut short, I guess, by widespread technological unemployment.
That's exactly right. Now, at the moment and in the past, automation, this is a continuation of, has created new jobs faster than it's destroyed old jobs. And the classic example is in agriculture, where in 1900, something like 40% of the US labour force worked on farms, and now it's down to 2%. But all those people went and got better, less laborious, less dangerous jobs elsewhere. What we don't know is when AIs and the robots, which are their peripherals, get smarter and smarter and smarter, will we get to a point where they overtake us in most of the sort of jobs that we can do, such that most people become unemployable for no fault of our own? It may well be a majority of us will never work again. Now, some people think this is already happening. I personally don't, but I think it may well do. And I think in maybe about 30 years, give or take 10 or 20, we may get to that point. And if we do, then we're going to need probably a totally new economic system. And the interesting thing is that not very many people are thinking about this yet.
No. Robots, you mentioned there briefly. How good are robots as we stand?
Well, the cutting-edge robots are very impressive. I would encourage anybody to Google Big Dog, which is a robot produced by a company called Boston Dynamics, which is owned by, guess who, Google, and its younger sibling, Spot. They are astonishingly impressive robots. There's another one called Atlas, which has there's a recent video gone up about Atlas being taken for a walk in the woods. They look quite clunky and primitive, and they're nowhere near as nimble as humans are, but they're progressing at an extraordinary rate.
And we move on to another acronym here, ASI, Artificial Superintelligence. How far away is that?
Nobody knows, and we don't even know if we can create it. But a lot of very smart people who've been thinking about this for a long time think that we can, and it may happen in the next few decades. So ASI, or superintelligence as it's more simply usually known, is simply what happens when you get to AGI, i.e. that human-level artificial general intelligence. When you get to that point, you can expand an artificial general intelligence in a way you can't do with a human brain. So if the first one takes up a warehouse full of servers, you put another one next door, and it isn't quite putting one Lego brick on top of another, but linking them up isn't too hard, and you've doubled the capacity. You can also speed them up in a way that you can't with human brains. In fact, signals within computers travel around about 1 million times faster than signals within human brains.
Really?
That oversimplifies things a bit, but the basic is true. And also you can improve the architecture of an AGI, which you can't do, obviously, with the human brain.
Yes.
So there's good reason to think that once we get to artificial general intelligence, i.e. human-level intelligence, we may very quickly shoot past that towards superintelligence.
I see.
Now, that would mean that we would become the second smartest species on the planet, and that could be quite uncomfortable. It could be great, it could be quite difficult.
Yes, and I suppose it's fair to say that we can't ensure 100% that any superintelligence that we create is friendly.
Well, we have to try. We have time, and we have smart people working on this problem. We need more smart people working on this problem. And that's, to be honest, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is to help more and more people become aware of this issue and how important it is to get this right. We cannot really afford, as a species, to create our successor, if you like, to create another species which is cleverer than us, without taking steps, without at least trying very hard to take steps to make sure it likes us.
But of course, there are always baddies in the world, aren't there? And there's nothing to stop them creating rogue machines.
That's always a possibility. I think it's likely the first AGI, the first artificial general intelligence, will be a very expensive project. And it's most likely to happen in a part of the world where people are, broadly speaking, benign. I mean, I suppose there's probably some people listening who think that America isn't a benign country or that Google isn't a benign entity, but I think that I'd rather it was built there than in North Korea, say.
Yes. Now, my next guest on the show today, by actual complete coincidence, we're going to be talking about Reni Anand, who is a professor of biological chemistry at Ohio State University, who has, and you may have heard about this, he has grown a brain which is now a replica of a 5-week-old fetus. It's the size of a pencil rubber. It has its own spinal cord and the beginnings of an eye, but it contains 99% of the cells that would exist in the brain of a human fetus. Now, as we talk about artificial intelligence, one of the disturbing things that's come up in my research about that brain is that brain, of course, then could be integrated into silicon chips. Then we're in deep trouble.
Well, I'm not so sure we're in deep trouble. I think it might be a very positive development. I read about that, but I don't know the details at all. But I think that one of the things we need to do is to understand better how our own brains work.
Yeah.
And we're making huge strides in that. I mean, we've learned more in the last decade than in the entire prior history of humanity. But the more we can understand about how our brain works and how intelligence works in general, the better we'll be able to make sure that the superintelligence is friendly towards us, is well disposed towards us. So I think it might be a good development.
Can I quote something from you, which I think is a kind of a nice way to finish? If we get it right, it will make humans almost godlike. But if we get it wrong, extinction is not the worst possible outcome.
Yes, indeed. And I don't know if you want me to go into details.
Please do. Story, I mean, what can be a what? Explain it. Go on. Yes.
Well, okay. To be honest, I think the worst outcome is eternal torture. You could imagine a superintelligence which we've mistreated for some reason, and it has a grudge against us, and it decides to keep us all alive as long as it possibly can on on drips. And presents us with a virtual reality of a sort of a Christian hell. But the chances of that happening are tiny, 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 tiny.
Yeah.
AI is a force for good, and it's going to be a force for more and more good. It does present challenges. We have to rise to and meet those challenges.
Well, it's a fascinating subject and a brilliant book. It's called Surviving AI, The Promise and Peril of Artificial Intelligence. Calum Chace, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome, Bill. It was fun.
And I'm more than impressed that one of your favourite albums was one that I made.
Any chance of you playing it out?
You know what? I'll go and find a track now and play it in a few minutes' time.
Excellent.
You're a star, Calum. All the best to you.
Thanks, Bill. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.